Hello and welcome to the Urban Elements Studio. Today we're going to be talking about an additional tool that you could add to your tool belt when it comes to quilting and quilting designs. That is the tearaway paper that has quilting designs on it that Urban Elements designed specifically for the home domestic machine or long arm machine. This is a single-use tearaway paper with a quilting design on it that will be quilted through using either your home domestic machine or the long arm, and then when you're finished quilting, the paper is simply torn away. So it is a single-use product. We have 16 different designs that are designed specifically for the Hoffman Dream Big panel, and that's what I'm going to be demoing on today. I have this particular Dream Big panel that I've added a little border to. I added the border just I may keep it, I may trim it off. Really it's just to help keep the Dream Big panel square as I'm doing the quilting process, because it is kind of a smaller block. But I really like the fabric that I picked out, so I'm likely going to keep it on there. But I'm going to go ahead and get the Dream Big panel loaded onto the machine, and then I'm going to show you how to position the 3 sheets of tearaway paper with a design on it that come in the packaging. But first I want to show you some of the other designs and what the product actually looks like up close. I know you won't be able to see all of these up close, but these are the 16 different panels, designs that are available for the Dream Big panels. These are all available on the website, and each one of them is designed specifically for the Hoffman Dream Big fabric panel. And I just wanted to go over a little bit on the pricing. I've heard people say they seem like they're a little bit expensive, but if we figure that the Dream Big panel is 43 inches square, 43 inches times 43 inches gives us 1,849 square inches. If we use what most quilters across the country charge for just an edge-to-edge design, which is 2 cents per square inch, that comes to $36.98. The Dream Big package is currently $36.50. So you can see doing this yourself costs about the same as having somebody do an edge-to-edge design. If you factor in that this is not an edge-to-edge design, it's more custom quilting, and the average in my area is 5 cents, it would cost $92.50 to have this quilted by a long armer, and that's only if they didn't have a minimum charge for the quilting of a small product to begin with. So I think all in all the cost for the tearaway is very economical, and I just want to show you after I get these picked back up, and I think this is the one that I'm going to be using today. And the name of the pattern I'm going to be using is called Avalon. And this is the packaging that you get, and inside the package, and obviously this is not a scale drawing, it's just to give you an idea what the actual design would look like. But you have the instructions in the back of the package that will tell you step by step how to position the tearaway on your quilt top, and really the only thing that you need would be some type of temporary spray adhesive to adhere this paper to the top of the quilt as you're quilting. And each of these papers, you get 3 sheets per package for the Dream Big, and each one of these will lay directly on top of the quilt top, and they have about a 2-inch overlap. The overlap is to help you align the pieces to the quilt top. And as you can see, this is the top or the bottom, and if I can get my thumbs, this will be the center panel, and then we have this looks like the bottom section. So these 3 pieces completely cover from side to side for the body of the quilt, which is what they're intended to do. And I'm going to go ahead and reposition the camera on the long arm machine and get the quilt top basted to the machine, and we're going to go ahead and position these and get started on some quilting today. I have these turned sideways because it's important that you see this. Each of the panels has its position. So there's the top panel, the center panel, and the bottom panel. It also tells you in which order these are supposed to be placed onto the quilt top. It may seem a little counterintuitive, but the center panel gets applied first, the top panel second, and the bottom panel third. So we're going to go ahead and position those in that order. The preset on my machine is 10 stitches per the inch. I'm not going to make a huge adjustment, but I am going to go up to 12 stitches per inch because we are going to tear this product away. That just reinforces the stitch a little bit closer so that when I tear away, I'm not pulling up any stitches. At 12 stitches per inch, that's plenty. If you are having any problem with the stitches pulling out, it may be the quality of the thread, because this tissue paper was designed specifically for tearing away, and it comes away very easily, as you will see later in the video. Before I spray the back of the paper, which is how I'm going to attach this, I want to show you how I'm going to line it up to the fabric. These dotted lines are an indication of where the petals are. So as you can see, if we carry out the dotted lines on the design paper, you can see that I'm lining it up to the fabric. And I did double check just to make sure that I do have my panel loaded so the top is the top of the paper, because these petals are different shapes. It's not a symmetrical quilt paper. The fabric isn't symmetrical in design, so the petals do line up in different places. So as you can see, this curve beautifully lines up with this petal. This lines up here. So I know that I have this in the correct position, and that's where I want to realign it after I spray the back of my paper with the 505 temporary spray adhesive. I'm just going to show you spraying this temporary spray adhesive on the back of the paper. And now I'm going to go ahead and load it onto the quilt. I've actually put some large-headed pins where the paper needed to go, just as a quick placement guide for the so I can get it attached properly. I have my pins that I placed in the fabric just to help me get it lined up quickly, and then I'm just going to take a minute to make sure I have it where I want it before I smooth it out. And now this is temporarily adhered in place, and what I will do when I get ready, I'm going to baste around the edges to help keep it in place the entire time I'm sewing. Temporary spray adhesive, depending on your environment, is only good for a couple hours. So if you spray the temporary spray adhesive and then go out shopping and come back, it's not going to be attached anymore because it actually evaporates away. So if you're going to attach this and you need to leave, what I would do is just baste around the edge of the paper and maybe around the petals, just so that when you come back the paper is still lined properly. So I'm going to go ahead and baste that and get to the next piece. I've already done the left side. What I'm going to do now, using the basting function on my machine, is just run a basting stitch down the edge of this paper so that the paper is positioned in place more permanently than the temporary spray adhesive. As you can see, this is outside of the quilt panel a little bit, because each of these panels have been printed hundreds of thousands of times, and depending on the washing and the gray goods that they used for the printing of that particular run, there's going to be little tiny differences in sizing. But I'm just going to go ahead and do my basting down this edge, and then I'm going to go ahead and add the top piece next and get it basted in place, and I'll move on to the bottom piece. When it comes to attaching the second piece, which is the top, you're going to find that we have about a 2-inch overlap, and you can use that overlap to look through the tissue to line up with the underneath side to make sure that we have the positioning correct. So also you have the dotted lines on the edge That'll help you line it up side to side. So I'm going to go ahead and spray my second piece. After I get it sprayed, I'm going to make sure it's lined up. And then again, I'm going to use my basting function and baste the edge so that this piece is more permanently attached while I do my quilting, just to make sure that the temporary spray adhesive doesn't evaporate depending on weather conditions. I have my second piece laid down. I have made sure that my overlap was good on the center two pieces here, and then I ran my basting stitch around the perimeter of the top here, and I also came around the top of the design with my basting function, because those stitches will easily come out after I'm finished quilting. But now I know my paper is not going anywhere, even if I have to leave the quilting for a while. Now I'm going to roll the quilt to the bottom and get that bottom section attached, and then we can get quilting. As you can see, I have my final piece, already has the temporary spray adhesive on it, and I've smoothed it into place. Again, I'm going to use the basting function to baste the perimeter of the tearaway in place so that it gives me a little bit more liberty with my timing than the temporary spray adhesive would. Again, this is well outside the perimeter of the actual panel, and it is just a basting stitch, so this will come out easily. As you can see, I wasn't really concerned with even lining up with the line because it's not going to stay. I'm also going to do around this edge here, just to make sure that I have a good tight basting. I don't even think I'm going to clip the thread. And as you can see, I'm not worried about lining up with that line at all. Really, this is just an outline, and all of these basting stitches for me are going to go away. I just think that this functions better this way. It isn't absolutely required. It's just the way that I'm basting my quilt top and the paper to get it ready to go. If you were doing this on a domestic machine, I would baste the quilt top, batting and backing in some fashion, either with a spray adhesive or with a fusible batting or with thread basting, so that all of your layers are clear, because once you get the paper down, you wouldn't want pins underneath it because you wouldn't be able to see where they're at. You could possibly pin through all four layers, the backing, batting, top, and paper, but I think I would rather either fuse it or thread baste it just to get it ready. So now I'm basically on to the quilting process. I'm going to go ahead and roll it back to the center and use that as my starting position, and then I'm going to quilt my way out both the front, or the top, and the bottom. So I'll go ahead and move that, and then we'll get started stitching. This is going to be a little tricky for me to film. I've turned off my surface light so you don't get the glare from that, and I'm going to try and move my handlebar up as high as I can, but I will have to stop and start there. All of these pieces, these quilting designs, I'm going to do a stop and start with a clean thread cut. You could, if you wanted to, trace it around and jump to the next design. I'm going to do mine a little cleaner and just go jump from one design to the other. Also, there's no stop or start on any of these pieces, so you can stop or start anywhere you choose. I'm going to start at the bottom, and I've already pulled my bottom thread up. I've adjusted my stitch per inch. I've increased it just 2 stitches per the inch, and I'm going to go ahead and quilt out this petal. One of the reasons I chose this leaf shape is because leaf shapes are organic. There's a lot of variations in nature, so when I tear this paper off, any little misgivings I had when I was stitching are not going to be visible. Also, I'm not going to be trying to stay exactly dead on the line everywhere. It's more important that I have fluid movements than it is that I try and stay exactly on these lines. Those are just guidelines to sew. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. I've locked my stitches, and now I'm going to go ahead and pull up my thread so I can cut it off and move to the next petal that I'm going to do. Now, a Dream Big panel is not something that you're going to want to race through. I mean, the reason you bought the panel is because it's beautiful, so you're going to want to try and do as good a job as you can on it. And so it's not a race. Quilting should be fun above all else, so we shouldn't stress ourselves out. I'm going to the next leaf that I'm going to do. I've pulled my thread up, and now I'm going to sew the second one. You can see how quickly the first one was sewn out. So there are quite a few here, but it's going to be a pleasant afternoon. I have a good road map of where my design is going to be, and I know that it's going to be evenly quilted when I'm finished, and so I'm not in a race to finish. You can stitch these out just as quick or as slowly as you want. But I think in the end it's going to be a very beautiful Dream Big panel. So that was number 2. I'm just keep going in this fashion until I get each of the petals done, and you can determine for yourself if you want to stitch around the dotted line or you just want to leave that space in between blank and just have the quilting here, which would certainly be plenty enough. This is densely quilted enough with this design. Also, you can see having this pattern to go by takes the fear out of doing the quilting on a Dream Big panel. We have these tearaway sheets that are available with block designs, with edge-to-edge designs for doing a pantograph style quilting, and again, these could be used for both the long arm and the domestic machine. For new long armers, this gets you comfortable being in front of the machine and getting some muscle memory on how these designs work and stitch out. So I have quite a ways to go, and I'm not going to make you suffer through all of that, but when I get a little closer to the end, I'll show you what it looks like, and then I'll show you how easily it is to tear away. At this point, I've gone and had a bathroom break. I've been sewing for about 13 minutes, and I have the entire center panel finished. So I rolled the quilt up, and I'm going to do the top. One of the things I didn't mention earlier is why we put all 3 pieces on at the same time to start. And that's because when you stitch, you get a small amount of distortion. The quilt comes in a little bit. And with all of these three pieces basted at the same time, any distortion is going to happen to all three pieces simultaneously, rather than trying to get it to line up after the fact, which would be a little bit more difficult. So the design will be more natural in its replication. So another thing I wanted to point out, depending on the size of your long arm, one of the things I always like to do is move the head of my machine forward and back over a design, just to make sure I'm going to be able to stitch that out without hitting the back wall or the front wall. But as I said earlier, I've taken off my ruler table, my ruler base, which does give me about 4 more inches of play. So I'm going to go ahead and continue stitching the top and then move to the bottom, and we'll talk about the outside edge. Well, I've been sewing for about 35 minutes, and I have all of the leaf designs sewn out for the body of the quilt. I've also had a couple dance breaks and a tea break in between. I'm at the point where I'm about to do these radiating lines, and I'm trying to make a decision for myself. The whole point of this product is to be a tool for your use, so you have to decide which is easier for you. I'm not great with free motioning straight lines. Even though the lines are printed here, I'm not that great at following a straight line. So I'm inclined to put on my ruler base and use a straight edged ruler to do these lines. At which point I'm deciding if I even want to keep the paper on here for that. I'm not sure that the exact placement of the line is critical, except that they radiate out, and I will have to tear that off when I'm finished. So if I eliminate the paper now and just use the ruler base and the ruler, I could save myself a little time in tearing. Just may not be quite as accurate. So I have that decision to make, but even as I've been sewing some of the pieces, you can see how easily the paper tears just on the seam line. It's perforated so much with the stitching that it comes off really easily. I think what I'm going to do is go ahead and trim mine out around the flower, so that when my radiating line comes out, that I stop it exactly where I've put on my border, because I did add a border to mine. So I'm going to go ahead and do that and get some of it stitched out, and then we can see what that looks like. I've gone ahead and cut away this piece here, because as you can see, here's my seam line for my border piece that I put on. You can see it in both sections. But I kept enough of the paper here so I can line up my line and get a pretty close approximation of where the line goes. You can see how my radiating lines are progressing. I'm using the actual edge of my border as my guideline, but I'm keeping a little bit of the tear away so I could make sure I line it up to the actual design. But then when it's finished, all I have to do is peel this away. And this is just a straight stitch, so this is peeling away really, really easy. But I did just want to show you how easy this comes off. The paper was designed to tear away. At this point, I have all of my design sewn. I have all of the radiating lines sewn on here. And now it's just a matter of tearing off the tearaway and getting the quilt off the frame. But I'm going to take advantage of the quilt being in tension and use that as an extra set of hands and just start peeling off some of this paper. Some people like popping those packing bubbles, and this is similar in experience to that. So if you have somebody in the family that enjoys doing that, you could call them into action. You could also get the kids or the grandkids to help you with this. But because we've increased the stitch length a little bit, perforated the paper really well, and it's just a matter of tearing the pieces off. If there's any little pieces left on there after I'm finished, I could always put this in the washing machine and they will just wash right out. But you can see that this goes pretty fast while it's on the machine, but it would also go pretty fast in if it was just sitting in your lap. It will make a nice little pile of paper on the floor when I'm finished, but I have tile floor, so I can just sweep that up. So I'm just going to go ahead and keep scraping this off. But you can see, I'll tighten that in a little bit. Okay, I have the quilt off of the frame. I got most of the tearaway torn off while I had the quilt still on the frame, and you can see there's still some little pieces on here. Some of those are stuck still, surprisingly, because of the 505 temporary spray adhesive. It's kind of like clinging to the quilt still because it's very arid right at the moment because of the winter. It's not much humidity. And I believe the humidity is what helps the 505 evaporate. But I have the quilt bound already, and I have the sleeve on it because I was prepared to do that. And at this point, I'm just going to go ahead and wash this. I could go ahead and keep with my fingernail rubbing on some of these smaller pieces. Some people use tweezers. I find that if I just use my fingernail, the pieces come off. But I'm going to save myself some time and put this in the washing machine. I just wanted to show you what the before and after of the effect of the washing does, but I could continue picking these pieces off by hand. Well, as you can see, I've pulled my Dream Big panel quilt out of the dryer, and all of the pieces are gone. I just put this in the wash on a regular wash cycle. In between the washer and the dryer, I did fleck off a couple of the pieces that were still on the quilt. But you can see by the time it came out of the dryer, all of the pieces are gone. And also, I know that the quilting is not really popping in your face, but I don't quilt pretend samples. I chose my thread color just as I would for this quilt, as if I were making it for myself, which in fact I did. And so this is the thread color that I would have used, and so it's not going to pop in your face like a black thread was as some kind of a demo. But I will give you a close-up view of the quilt just to show you what it looks like. And that is the Dream Big tearaway. These Dream Big quilting designs come in 16 different varieties. They're also available as digital files or as the paper tearaway, so you could use them on your Dream Big quilt. But we also have block designs in the tearaway and edge-to-edge designs or designs used specifically for border. These can be used on the home machine, the domestic machine, or on a long arm, so you have the option of doing either of those also. So take a look on the website and see what you think. That's urbanaelements.com.